I am really excited about this panel. We really have some real thought leaders in unique perspectives on coming to this thing. A few logistics for our streaming audience. One, we're broadcasting both live and tape from beautiful University of Texas here in the main ballroom. We have a studio audience of about 600 in attendance. Don't look around, it's 600. Welcome to Austin, and we're glad to have you here in Austin, Texas. So what I really like about this panel on electric vehicle charging, like I kind of mentioned, is the diversity of thought leadership. So up here on stage, we have one person who is really an expert and an industry leader in helping with the grid asset of electric vehicles, and it's more than just about transportation. We have another leader who's really rolling out some interesting workplace charging programs, and what does that mean, and how does that all entail? We have another leader in here about research and automotive design. And last but not least, we do have an unpublished special guest, our own Drew Johnston, who up to a few weeks ago was a part of my team, but a leader in crushing barriers in the widespread adoption for a 10-county region we call Central Texas, an adoption of electric and natural gas vehicles. So I'll do a quick bio as I go down. And just kind of the rules on my panel, what I generally avoid is I don't do one question and just go down the list. What I do is I have targeted questions based where I think your subject matter expertise may be. But if anyone on the panel wants to chime in, or especially if you have a completely different view or a different angle on it, we'd really like to hear that. I mean, that's one of the goals here. This is to me more of a facilitated conversation than a panel just pushing out information. And we are going to save a little bit of time. We're going to make up a little bit of time, and I think end at 3:30 is our goal here today, and I'll make sure as your facilitator that we get there.
We're also closed. We're also not doing the networking break and the 30-minute ending thing. So we have the whole, the next session will not be only 15 minutes so that we have that. The next session will have as long as they want. So we're canceling out the last hour so that everyone can go till 5 if they need to with their panels. We've been hearing from people that they really want to spend at least an hour and 15 on the last panels of the day because they really like the topics.
Great. So first, immediately to my left, we have Brett Hauser, CEO of Greenlots, where he leads the company's global business with a particular focus on OEM and utility partnerships with ongoing expansion efforts in charging infrastructure and grid management. He is a key voice on open standards as co-founder of the Open Charge Alliance. Could I get a slight light round of applause for Brett? Yes, thank you. In the workplace charging arena, AMD, we have Justin Murrill here, Global Sustainability Manager for Advanced Micro Devices here in Austin, AMD. In this role, he oversees strategic and strategies and programs related to AMD's supplier responsibility, product stewardship, and employee environmental programs. To include, he's going to inform you about their electric vehicle workplace charging program. So, thank you. Next up, we have Ben Schlimme, Executive Program Manager with Toyota, with responsibilities include overseeing Toyota's powertrain strategy for R&D, balancing North American specific market requirements with Toyota's global programs. Toyota is in the process of relocating its national headquarters to Plano, Texas. Awesome. Bring it in. Or does that say Austin, Texas? No.
Not so lucky.
Fun fact, outside of work, Ben is also winning car races, specifically the Score Baja 1000 race, both ATV and car. So maybe he'll give us a little highlight on how that works. So go Ben. Our special surprise unannounced guest is Zpryme's and ETS president, very own Drew Johnston. So I did pull your bio off your page a bit and maybe added a thing or two of my own. I don't know. Drew is the president of Austin, Texas-based Zpryme Energy's Energy Thought Summit. As ETS president, he drives the strategy and vision for ETS-branded events. Further, he provides strategic guidance for the company's media, research, and advisory services. Previously, Johnston, as a valued member of my team here at Austin Energy. We have several of his folks kind of came up here and supporting Drew here. He led the Central Texas Fuel Independence Project, a 10-county advanced vehicle technology initiative sponsored by the U.S. Department of Energy and led by Austin Energy. Could I get a round of applause for Drew Johnston? That is your panel. Oh, and I am Karl Popham, manager of electric vehicles and emerging technologies here at Austin Energy. So thank you. Yes, All right, so we kind of have a few warm-up questions, and we're just kind of going to go down the list here, for lack of a better word. But like I said, if you want to chip in or have a different thought, by all means. So I want to talk first about, Brett, what you're doing with Greenlots. Sounds like a pretty cool project you have with Southern California Edison, possibly the world's largest EV demand response pilot. Can you tell the audience here what's that pilot about and what you're looking to achieve?
Sure, absolutely. So for those of you that know Mike, needs to be turned on.
So what we're showing here is what an outage looks like in the electric business. This is a self-healing
Can anyone hear me? Here we go.
All right, there we go.
So Greenlots is working with Southern California Edison to deploy 80 level 2 EVSE over 9 corporate campuses. For those that don't know what demand response is, demand response programs are programs that customers can enroll in and they get incented for curtailing their energy consumption. So Southern California Edison wants to roll this out to their existing customer base, both on a residential and commercial and industrial level. But before they do that, they want to get a better understanding of what the pricing incentives are, what is required by users to curtail their load. So for the first year of this program, we will be trying various pricing mechanisms, price points, and incentives to see what it takes to get a consumer or an employee to stop charging their vehicle. And today, the way the program is set up, and there are various ways that we can set it up because we're using open standards throughout the program. One is called a protocol called OCPP, which is communication from the cloud to the charge station. The other is called OpenADR, which is an open standard used for demand response protocols. So a user can go up to the kiosk at the charge station, and they can make the decision that I absolutely have to have a charge today, no matter what the cost is, because I'm low and I'm going to have to get home. So they'll pay the regular price. And then beyond that, there are 2 options that someone can pick. One is, well, I'd like to get a level 2 charge, but if there is a demand response event, I'm willing to be curtailed. And for that, that person will pay, a discount, say, 20% off the price. And then the other discount level is someone that says, maybe they drive a Chevy Volt and they're fine with a level 1 charge, and they say, don't worry, I don't really need a level 2 charge at all. I will take just a level 1 charge. And so for that, they get an even deeper discount. So, and then of course, customers, as we evolve the program for real-time, demand response events, people will be notified through the mobile app, and they'll be able to opt in directly through a response on a text. So there's a lot of cool things that'll come out of this, and the hope is that after the first year, when they've collected enough data and then have an analysis, we'll be able to expand this program to other companies within their territory.
Cool. Well, I do have a follow-up question. I'm going to save it after we get down to the question other, but that's a very exciting project, definitely from a utility perspective. We're very interested in what's going on in there. So, Justin, tell me just how it came about where AMD decided to go ahead and provide workplace charging. How many employees do you have now taking advantage of this program? Just give us a quick kind of what's the value proposition or the thought process behind doing this in the first place?
Sure. So we looked at this back in 2009, 2010 timeframe, and had a commuter program for a long time. So how our employees get to work, recognizing that there's quality of life, there's emissions associated with that, there's a recruiting and retention angle to commuter benefits. We had that program in for a long time that was always focused on how to avoid solo trips to the office. Now we had this option about how you can have a green commute and have it be a solo trip. So we started having these conversations and installed them back here in Austin in 2010, at our Sunnyvale campus in California in 2011, and then up in our Ontario, Canada campus in 2014. And really discussions there were around, we were hearing a lot of interest from our employees, which is one angle. We knew that there was some interest there, but we weren't seeing EVs in the parking lot. So we had this discussion of why should we make this investment if we're not seeing these vehicles? And I think that's what most businesses and cities were sitting there in that chicken and egg conundrum. And so we decided to go ahead and put some stations in and see what happened. Of course, they sat empty for the first couple of months. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, everybody's researching, doing the, finding out what they want to get, and they started just coming and coming and coming to now we have a good problem. We have way more demand than we have supply, even after we've increased the number of stations. So right now we have about 30 ports across those 3 locations, growing. Every week I see new users come in, probably close to 100 employees that are using these stations now, particularly out in Sunnyvale, California. So we are constantly in that state of assessing the demand. What can we do? And obviously this is not the most business critical thing to have these stations, but it is. We do see value in it. We hear from our employees that it's important. We've received positive external recognition for it, so it's something that we will continue to do and continue to evaluate it. And we actually publicly report on our employee programs and our emissions, and we're very transparent about it. So this is something that we're able to take what's behind the scenes. Most people would never see how your employees get to work and tell that story.
Great. And the Austin Energy, when they launched our public network called Plug-in Everywhere in 2011. Our first workplace charging came from one of their company's leading scientists brought a leaf, and people were saying, why is there an orange extension cord coming up the 5th story of the building down across the sidewalk and plugging into this car? And so we had a very active HR, like how can we accommodate this need? So it's kind of interesting. We've seen it both ways. What comes first, the car or the station? But we definitely see that as a real big opportunity from our programs. Okay, so Ben, let me just throw a car. I mean, I just love cars. I always had as a kid. Ford hired me out of college. I'd probably be working for Ford right now. But Tesla recently announced, so I'm always interested in the latest technologies, and I like old cars and I like new cars. But they announced to their customers that they're going to do a software update and just a big push on autonomous driving vehicles and their obviously electric vehicles. Do you have a thought or strategy on thoughts around autonomous vehicles?
Certainly, I think what we see Tesla doing is exciting in the industry, right? They're a up-and-coming company that's making some statements. For Toyota, of course, we're exploring the opportunities around autonomous driving. We have vehicles on the road currently that we've been testing for autonomous driving. There appears to be a play to do those cars in the future. When that will be, I think is going to be tough to tell. We have an interesting situation in the U.S. with so many different types of environments that these cars could potentially operate in. I think we need to be really careful about how we deploy those. So ultimately, they're providing a safe opportunity for the customer and really delivering to the customer's needs.
Okay. So kind of on that theme, and Drew, this next question is for you. A lot of the core themes here in all of ETS have been disruptive technologies. So since I've been here, I've heard about everything from the improvement of energy storage. I've heard about autonomous vehicles, and I've even heard about wireless charging. Yeah. So envision a vehicle that can drive 500 miles between charges. It can accept a wireless charge, and it can drive itself. What kind of market opportunities exist, or what do you think kind of services, what does that world look like?
Inventing a lavatory for your car. If it's going to go 500 miles without a charge, you might as well just, get a whole, caravan and just get a big old car and get a big old lavatory in the back and little kitchen in the back and just constantly be driving around. That sounds wonderful.
So you're promoting the electric RV then?
I am. The new wave of the future.
That drives itself. That's pretty interesting.
I actually may be more of a Luddite on the autonomous vehicle side. I may be more erring on the side of skeptic with the notion that when I'm rushing to work, I want a car that will tell me to not go over the speed limit. And so I'm going to be very hesitant about that until I see applications that are small. And I think one of the things that I've been encouraged by is folks that are actually doing the tests and trials that I hear about at least, they're looking at targeted applications. Maybe there will be a point where we're trying for 5 minutes at a time on a highway, within a safe confines to even try this type of application of autonomous vehicles. But I mean, in that kind of world, one of the things we saw was HEVO, was the magnetic strips, or strips that could potentially be inductive charging instead of conductive while you're driving along the highway. And one of the hypotheses we had heard was that a strip by the company HEVO, when they did a test through the Center for Electromechanics at UT, they said that a 1 mile strip in Mopac, basically crossing the river at Town Lake, would be enough to charge a today Nissan Leaf at, I think it was 87 kVA, to basically charge it up to 80% by a 1 mile strip. And so the idea of annihilating stops along roads, I think, is sort of the spirit of what you're saying is powerful. I don't know how soon that comes, though. It seems like every time we hear about a timeline of 3 to 5 to 15 years, that's annihilated by about half that time. And so the pace of this progress, I don't know if all that will synchronize the way we all envisioned. I don't know if all of that will coalesce perfectly into a perfect little bun or a perfect little gift of amazingness by 2020. But we could be looking at each one of those separate applications certainly by 2017, 2018. For me, the question will be, what happens next when we have, one of the cars in my home is a 2000 Mazda, right, with 215,000 miles on it, right? I think Karl knows it well. It's
Yeah, it's very secure. You open the door like this.
But I mean, when you look at something like that next to this car of the future, I think that there's going to be a temporary discomfort for everyone dealing with that. It's not going to be like, hey, texting and driving. It's going to be very different. And I do want to see that the telematics are responsive and reactive to the human condition, not to other technology.
Okay, great. So let's come back down, Brett, let's pick on you again. So I know you're a big fan of open standards, and I believe in this pilot you're also using OpenADR, if I recall my research correctly. Tell me, or specifically, tell the vendor community, from your perspective, why open standards are important for their market and for their market opportunity. Because a lot of times we deal with debates, we deal with kind of proprietary systems, or they will use other phrasing that's not compliant, but they work with, or those kind of things. What would be your advice to a company in regards to developing a product in this space, specifically open standards?
Sure. I mean, I think, quite frankly, the open versus proprietary standard transcends EVs. It goes beyond that. I mean, ultimately, if you have a proprietary communication protocol, once a customer makes an investment with that system, they are locked in. And the only way that they can make a switch is by replacing whatever it is that they've invested with something new. And especially in a nascent industry like the EV industry, when people are spending millions of dollars on EV infrastructure, I mean, it's been shown that there needs to be at minimum 4 charge stations for every one vehicle. I mean, right now the US is at a 10-to-1 ratio. So we've still got some work to do. And what happens if one of those companies that's put a proprietary system out there goes out of business? So you're taking new dollars and putting it to replace old infrastructure, as opposed to putting new infrastructure in place and helping to grow the entire charging infrastructure system. So I think it's extremely important. And ultimately, vendors, and that be whether a hardware provider or a software solution like ours, we should be able to compete on feature, function, and price, not on the fact that we've got someone locked in. We need to drive costs out of the ecosystem, and proprietary systems do exactly the opposite of that. They keep people locked in, they inhibit innovation, and if long term we want to see this industry grow, we can all grow together, we can be competitors, but we should do it on a level playing field so that the industry as a whole can grow. And if you believe in the philosophy that rising tides float all boats, then we would be good.
Yeah, and as a purchaser of these systems, if there is a standard, we'll always put that in a requirement. So we're generally not interested in other competing, if there is a viable solutions out there. We actually, 2 summers ago, Austin Energy did a demand response pilot for residential EV charging, and we were big proponents of the open ADR at that point, 2.0 standard. So yeah, I could not reemphasize that enough. Our vendor community really understand the standards coming in. It's going to, in the long run, make you much more competitive, I think, without a doubt. So Justin, let me talk to you about something. So in 2014, according to my notes here, you led the effort to increase AMD's infrastructure by 40% to better support the nearly 100 EV owners at AMD. What successes and challenges have you faced in rolling out this type of growth?
Let's see. So for the challenges for that project, I mean, there's definitely a considerable time, energy, money, effort that goes into increasing the infrastructure, ongoing managing the projects and the sites. It's not a super time-intensive thing, but there's issues that come up. Especially after 3 years into it, we get maintenance issues of older stations, and once demand for these stations really exceeds the supply. We weren't sure what to do at first. We were out in California. We had 3 or 4 times as many people, EV drivers, than stations, and so we tried a first option of saying, you're going to get this station for these 3 hours a day, right? And try that model. That did not work, right? People would work from home or they would travel and that station would sit empty and everybody else is like, what's going on? Why are there empty stations? So we went to a first come, first served basis, came to a policy around max charging 3 to 4 hours. If you see a vehicle there that's been charging 3 or 4 hours, you can unplug it. So basically coming up with an agreed terms, we actually invited the EV owners to give input on that, created a forum on it and said, tell us what's working, what's not. Came up with a couple iterations on that. We provided a forum. One thing that really works is, they started shooting emails all the time saying, hey, so-and-so parked here in this vehicle, why don't you move your car? And we're saying, this doesn't work at all. So created a forum like on our intranet site, basically a social media site internally where they can post questions. They found a cool article. They can start to share these kind of insights and the complaining that goes along with it. Not a lot of that, but some of it. So those are some of the challenges, and just creating that community, that EV community. I think they like to be part of that. We've when they apply for these to access our stations, we ask them, how influential was AMD having these stations available to you actually purchasing an EV vehicle? Over 90% are saying significantly. I think it has a measurable impact on their choice to own these or to go out and purchase or lease these vehicles.
Justin, what are some etiquette points that you guys have had to address for the EV owning community?
So some of the more obvious ones I've mentioned,
Yeah.
But some of the less obvious ones. So one of them that we're really facing with now, and this would be, who would think of this going into it, but is basically making sure that you place these stations in such a location that they can reach several parking spots. So what happened was we put them in, where you just have a row of spots,
Yeah, right.
And so what happens is, in order to, after that 3 or 4 hours, people have to go and move their car in the middle of the day. Not very convenient, right? If in order to let somebody else come in and access the station. So if you can place them in such a way where there's parking, they can reach 6 to 8 stations around it. And so somebody else there's an agreed upon etiquette that, all right, after 3 hours, I'm going to come unplug you and plug me in. People start leaving their charge port open, so that I need a charge. So there's really some interesting social norms that get established in an EV community when you facilitate the communication and you just set certain parameters, boundaries, and if it crosses it, here's what you do. You file this complaint form and you find a way to handle that. That's happened one time where we've had to get HR involved and somebody unplugged my car and I have a problem with my vehicle now. So have those ready, but I don't think they're really needed once you establish a healthy EV community at the workplace.
One of the things that we found, our customers have found with our system is it's kind of the carrot and the stick, or negative incentives, meaning that if you want everyone to have 3 hours to charge, you allow them that time period, but then once they go over that 3 hours, as opposed to paying, if it was 10 cents per kilowatt hour or whatever, the system automatically starts charging them a heftier fee. Like they have a 5-minute or 10-minute grace period, whatever they set. but then every 5 minutes, maybe it's another like $3 or something like that. So if you start impacting someone's wallet, it'll be surprised to see how quickly they get up and move their car and do what they need to do. So.
Great. So Ben, what's the next cool car you're excited about, especially as it might relate to electric vehicle, or just even just the from a strategy perspective?
I got you. I think certainly for this conference, one of the vehicles that we're really excited to see hit the market finally is our new Murrill coming at the end of this year. Albeit not a dedicated EV, it's a fuel cell vehicle operating with electricity. So, our R&D center has been working on that car for quite some time. We had it in a standard Highlander vehicle and have done a lot of in-use work with that vehicle, ensuring it's gonna, meet our Toyota customers' expectations. So we know there's going to be a lot of challenges with that. It's an early market introduction. It's certainly going to need to take some early adopters that are willing to overcome those challenges of a vehicle like that. But Toyota's committed to the longevity and what we feel is a really sustainable technology with hydrogen. So that's our vehicle for the 2030 timeframe. We'll give it some time to come to market. I think there'll be some other vehicles that'll have maybe a larger significant impact on the environment as we roll out more hybrids. I think yesterday we announced at New York that we'll have our RAV4 hybrid vehicle finally. We think there's a lot of market demand for those smaller SUVs, and so Toyota's fully committed to the electrification of powertrain, whether it be in a hybrid format, a fuel cell format, or a plug-in format. So we're excited to see some of those products coming soon.
Well, and also, so Murrill is derived from the Japanese word future. So really, that's where the future is going, you think?
That's something that we feel has a good opportunity for the future. We're going to need cooperation from industries and the government to help proliferate the fueling stations. So that's going to be a big challenge. It's something that we're working with to try to speed that adoptions of stations. And I know at least in California, there's a strong initiative to bring those to market. There's only a handful now, but I think our expectations in the next 10 years is to get 100 of those stations out there. Hydrogen has a relatively rapid refueling time compared to an EV. It's got pretty good range, and so we think it's a good technology for the future.
Okay. And no, I don't speak Japanese. I am fluent in Wikipedia, though. Drew, did you have a point or thought on?
It's so germane. One of the things in my last job, I was with Austin Energy, and we led this initiative called the Central Texas Fuel Independence Project. And it was looking at Central Texas as a place that can become fuel independent. That the notion of that was really remove barriers by policy, through education, ensuring public health, safety, and welfare, and actually really at the end of the day, tee it up so that it is easy for infrastructure to get installed. Here's the surprise though. I mean, for me, with CNG, which is a Captain Obvious opportunity as it seems in Texas, really fuzzy report recently came out saying $450 million of economic opportunity were developed through natural gas vehicle infrastructure in the state. And if you look at the residential purchase of CNG vehicles for the Honda Civic, which is the only sedan-style natural gas vehicle, I think there have been the state of Texas simultaneously did a $2,500 rebate for anyone that bought an EV or an NGV, and 15 people bought the NGV, and they have already run out of the rebates for the EVs. So the challenge was that a infrastructure can run you from a plug, right, just to a socket, versus a $1.5 million thing for a CNG fueling station. So for me, the challenge with fuel cells is sort of what you hit on, but perhaps even more bigger, right? Because CNG is really extractable. We can really get it, from down the block to right home. It seems like the natural gas home compressor might be able to lift off some of that sales, But I mean, we have seen disastrous failures with some types of infrastructure, not disastrous failures as in actual physical disasters, but for the economies of those industries and those sectors, we've seen a lot of aggressive effort not followed up by industry and not followed up by government. And in some instances where we really have tried to support new types of fueling infrastructure, I think it's ended up being undercut halfway through the life cycle of that, right? So I lived in DC at the time that they had the hydrogen fuel station up at 14th and H, right? And so I never saw a vehicle there once. You know, I lived there for 7 years, so it was just sort of like, wow, this is taking up space on Capitol Hill. That's great. So so for me, I'm not skeptical, but I really do wonder about, you know, Toyota really has stuck its neck out for fuel cells. It's really believed in this. And it's great because it is, if we can get there, it unleashes a real opportunity multiplier that can be competitive with electric vehicles. But I think the infrastructure challenge is really unanswerable at this time. I mean, California can try to do it, New York can try to do it, but what do you do in between those states? I mean, I guess that's my question. You know, can you do it by a state sort of ad hoc approach? Or is it going to take something more comprehensive from something other than Toyota? Because we've seen Nissan try to do the EV infrastructure, and that's a hit and miss too. I mean, you know, so I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I really am.
You know, we've had a lot of discussions about that, and you know, there's a lot of minds that go into thinking about how to roll these products out,
Yeah.
and certainly, you know, when you're developing new infrastructure like hydrogen, it's not going to make much sense to
very volatile.
to get one station in LA and then say, okay, Texas, we're going to put one there and one here.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to get the concentration up so people feel comfortable about, you know, with their vehicle and making their trips. I've had the discussions, and you know, I don't think we think about it with different people. How many gas stations do you use?
Right.
You know, I think when we've had that discussion, 1, 2, 3, you know, it's not like you're using all of them. So how many stations do you need in the general area to feed those vehicles? I think at the rate at which we see the stations coming online, we think there's an opportunity to, you know, in the early 20s to support about 60,000 vehicles.
Okay.
But yeah, it's going to take you know, kind of an inside-out approach. You're going to need to get markets like California, where there are some additional mandates out there with ZEB mandate and the leading type consumers that are willing to adopt these new technologies, whether it's an EV, a hybrid, or a fuel cell, to champion it. And you know, if you roll back the clock, I won't turn the history back too far, but you know, 1800s, 1900s, we had EVs, right?
Right.
That's what we had. They kind of went away. They didn't. They really were there for a while in small format, and you know, here they're back again. Is it right? Is it right now? You know, it's these things don't always take on the first account, but I think our society's changing, and certainly I hear a lot about it here. You know, the consciousness behind energy use and what it means and what the environment is doing, it is an all-time high.
Yeah.
So, you know, we hope something like, you know, zero emissions vehicle like we have with a hydrogen fuel cell, and the generation of that fuel should be on a clean generation. We can in Toyota take that time to the market to develop for us.
Cool.
Excellent. So we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. And do we have a microphone person here? Do we have anyone who like to address a question to the panel, or anyone in particular? And while you're thinking about it, I'm going to ask Ben one. What's something most people don't know about on competitively racing in the Baja 1000? What's something that just most people really don't think about that you have to be aware of?
Wow, that's a good question. What might somebody not realize? Let's see. I would have to say that people have talked about racing off-road as like a 24-hour plane crash, and that's maybe not the most opportune time to be talking about that now, so apologize for that. But you know, that's frequently.
We'll edit that out. Don't worry.
Well, that's frequently what you hear it being talked about. You know, it's a type of environment where you have to adapt constantly to what's around you and make changes and you know, put that effort into getting across the finish line.
It seems quite a bit different in thought process versus strategy and R&D at Toyota. It has to be years, potentially decades ahead, and then staying alive within one split-second decision.
I'll say one thing I do learn from it is you start that event, any of those events, with a solid plan. You've got maybe 100 people around you that are on that plan, but that plan's good for a minute. Right. And then there's a new plan and a new plan, and you've got to orchestrate this team to adjust to those new plans. And we try to operate, I try to operate my team that way, is, you got to have a plan, you got to put the effort into it, but you got to be adaptable to the plan, and you can't be a slave to what you think should have happened, because there are environmental issues that are changing. So it's, I apply it that way in the office.
Yeah, there's a patent quote about, the best laid plans completely, go outside the window after the first shot is fired.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
All right, so I gave you all a second to think on your question. If not, I'm going to randomly select people, even if it's on my team, and call them out. So, but I do actually see someone raise their hand. Yes.
Hi, Chris Roman, San Diego Gas and Electric. For the demand response portion of it, so I assume, I guess two-part question. One is, I assume you're doing the 2.0 BE protocol?
That's correct.
And then what are you planning? Are you already doing anything with the information coming back? Is that being stored? How are you dealing with that? I'm on a statewide IOU team, and that's one thing just for the general demand response, not related to EV, but how are we going to handle this information? What are we going to do with it? Do you have plans, or are you already doing something analytically with that?
Sure, no, that's a good question. It is Southern California Edison's project, so they will endeavor to do the final tally of the results and make a presentation. So we are the software provider, the service provider, but it is their data. So they are working on it. I'm not sure if they're going to be doing updates on a quarterly basis or wait till the first year is over. Thank you for the question.
I had a question also for the panel, actually. So, I mean, if we're looking at if we're looking at level 2 as sort of the status of today's charging, but I hear more and more out of California that honestly put it's temporary, right? It's going to be going away. We're going to be going to level 3 or DC fast, and we see BMW coming with their own iteration of that, and we see Nissan, and everyone's doing that, and that's great, and Tesla's too, and folks are going to continue to do that. So if we see more and more level 3, and then we eventually get to wireless, and then we get into in-road, and we're talking about a 2030 timeframe, what other iterations of vehicle charging are there going to be? I mean, if for fuel cell, for instance, like where's going to be an application for fuel cell? What's going to happen to the level 2 charge? I mean, are we going to say goodbye? Is level 2 going to be planned obsolescence by 2018, 2019?
So, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's going to be obsolete. I will tell you, though, that...
Because I have an old Nokia phone, and I'm just waiting to sell that sucker for a lot.
I think you can turn that in for like $50 towards your new phone.
I'm waiting for like that old Mac, how it's really popular now again, like you can sell for $2,000, so,
the U.S. government spent about $230 million rolling out level 2 infrastructure between the Charge Point America and the EV project. And the statistics that came back, and is still true today, is that the utilization of those level 2 charge stations is less than 15%. So from an actual usability standpoint, it wasn't effective. Now, we talk about the chicken and the egg perspective, and the fact that someone knows that a level 2 charge station is out there and that they could use it if they ever need it gives some comfort and might help push people towards that purchase. But they're not used. And what we've found, I mean, Greenlots today has about 37% of all DC fast chargers that are out in the North American market are on our system. And we see a high propensity or desire of drivers to be able to access the DC fast chargers in the public domain, as opposed to the level 2, because there's very few real applications for that. I think with the DC fast charging, those are mostly 50 kilowatt now. I think based on the plans of the automotives, I think you'll see 50 being the minimum size. For a roadside, I think you'll see 100, even 150. I think that the smaller size, like a 24 kilowatt, like what BMW has, will actually replace the level 2s in those locations.
Okay, because that's really not DC, is it?
It is DC. We're going to have to work through the nomenclature, because if you think of 50 kilowatt as a fast charger, what is a 24 kilowatt?
Right.
Somewhat fast. Yeah. So we've got to work through the nomenclature. Yeah.
And what we find at Austin Energy, and I'll answer your question, Drew, is without a doubt, vast majority of charging is done at home. our customers start, within a couple weeks of driving, they look at charging their car most like charging their phone. They don't think about it. And we had one of our EV drivers answer, well, how long does it take you to charge your car? And he said 10 seconds. You know, it's like, how long does it take for you to charge your Samsung right there? You don't think about it. It's a habit. You just plug it in, you go to bed, and you wake up, and it's there. But I do see more of a demand for faster and faster when you're not at the convenience of your home, for faster and faster charging, and that's kind of what we're looking at now.
But the, you know, and that's right, most people are charging at home, and you know, a lot of people have showed the duck curve, you know, today, and how it impacts the grid. You know, there is, you know, what happens, people come home from work, they plug in their vehicle, maybe the rates go down at, you know, 7, 8, 9 o'clock, depends on where you live, and so their cars have been programmed to start charging at that time, and so you have an unintended second peak. And so one of the things that you have to do, we talk about intelligent charging, is, you know, you have to have a system in place that can help to curtail the charging, you know, and it's going to happen, you know, on a cluster by cluster basis. I mean, we have enough capacity in the system to handle everyone charging, but you know, from a clustering perspective, at the distribution level, you have to be able to kind of spread or smooth out that curve. So there's a lot of things that we're doing now with utilities to be able to manage at that distribution level and have programs. Utilities can have programs that says, you know, someone has, you know, signed up for a program and they've said, you know, by 6:30 every morning I have to have 100%, you know, state of charge of my battery. But from the point that they plug in the night before until that point in the morning, you have that window of time to charge their vehicle, so that the utility can help to kind of balance out when they're using their system. And you know, the hopeful intended consequence is to, you know, altogether defer or altogether avoid infrastructure upgrades.
I think we have
Karl?
time for one more question from the audience, please. All right, we got a microphone.
So two quick ones. The first one is for the guy from Tesla.
Toyota.
Who's that?
Where?
For the guy from Tesla. I took a ride in the Tesla just like 2 days ago, and he showed me the charging network. And by the end of 2015, they expect to have a fully nationwide charging network, so you can take your Tesla anywhere, which is a beautiful thing. But I didn't ask this question of him. Maybe somebody up here knows. Will I be able to plug my Volt into their Tesla network, or is it only Teslas?
No, I mean, I can take that. Well, you can't really, technically speaking, a Volt doesn't have a DC fast charging outlet, so
Okay.
you wouldn't be able to do a Volt, but a Leaf might be a good example. And right now, the answer is no.
Okay.
You can't. Now, but you know, the reverse of that is that Tesla sells like CHAdeMO adapters for $1,000, and Tesla's making use of the charge stations that are put out for, you know, the CCS combo, right, everyone else, and the systems aren't actually built for the Tesla, so they're piggybacking off everyone else's system, and they're going to probably cause, you know, some maintenance issues with that.
Okay, so second question, the idea of having an electric vehicle is a wonderful thing, and we put in a charger at our office, and we put in a solar carport to charge that charger, and one of the people in the office said, you know, you're spending an awful lot of money for this, why don't you just buy us all Nissan Leafs? And I said, okay, fine, and then what? And I got a blank stare, and I said, and then what? What do you do with your Nissan Leaf? Well, you plug it into the Decker coal-fired power plant, and what have we gained in this exchange? So the idea of an electric vehicle is a good thing, but I haven't heard anybody say running your electric vehicle off of some clean energy source as opposed to just burning more coal to run your car.
This is the challenge of religion versus physics and energy, right? So some of this is like a religious ideal that we want to aspire to. Some of this is actual physics. But I mean, Austin Energy has a green power plan, right? So everyone's, want to break that down, Karl?
Well, yeah, and I agree that. So, and obviously I've been to your site there. It's beautiful.
I do too. I mean, I feel you. But
It is classic driving on sunshine with the solar is charging the battery and the battery is charging the car. So what we've done to address the issue, so we have over 220 public stations as part of Plug-in Everywhere. So we purchase all the power that flows through there, and we've had over 100,000 charging events since we started in 2011. So they do get used. Charging events, someone's plugged and unplugged. 100% green choice, so that's 100% E-certified renewable energy. Specifically, this is wind contracts. So just to try to get rid of that notion on our public charging network is just to reinforce, no, this is 100% certified renewable energy if you plug in at these 220 stations. At home, there's many of our customers, they sign up for Green Choice at home. We found out people who have been early adopters on EVs We also saw a definite correlation, early adopters, of people who participated in our very substantial rooftop solar program and rebates. They were some of the first ones to get also their EVs as well, so they're a little more conscious of it. But I agree. But what we're seeing nationwide, we are seeing a greening of the grid. So Austin Energy's goal went from 35% to now 55%, and that's really from solar and wind, so that's very aggressive for 2025. So as we see a greening of the grid, I don't hear a lot of noise of people implementing new coal plants in the US. What I am hearing is big news on solar and solar PPAs. Those are power purchasing agreements, sorry for the acronym. Wind and those type of things is what I'm seeing getting the momentum. And then the debatable spot is then also natural gas power plants as well. It's kind of the new generation. But I agree, it's an issue. I do think time's on our side on that. Austin needs to try to address it directly with some of our green choice programs. But yeah, that's a good point. And it's a great system. So it's at Concurrent Design, it's North Austin. I'd recommend you take a look at it if the guard doesn't kick you out. I mean, it just looks cool. I mean, it's a real pretty exciting thing.
And just to add to that, we had the same question come up at AMD, and so to be able to say that 100% of our energy for the Austin campus is from renewables helps address that, because it was one of the first questions that we got.
AMD, real quick, would it be feasible to, in the next 3-5 years, see you guys transitioning out from your level 2s to either the faster level 2/DCs that we're talking about, or go to level 1s for some who are just like really chill about it? Hey, I'm going to be here all day, right? And other people that are like, no, I want to go from my parking spot, go to a charger, and then leave.
Right.
You know, is there that migration?
I think you got to look at the type of business and the type of visitors.
Right.
So if you're a retail, you got short visits, a lot of turnover.
That's what I'm thinking. An office is interesting because
so
we have
for
a
us,
lot of office opportunities.
Yeah, for us, I don't think a level 3 would be feasible. Level 2s will probably last us for a while. We do actually have a couple level 1s, which do get used. We have some people that drive little electric mopeds and can plug in those, so they're still available.
And we do rebate electric mopeds and motorcycles as well as
Oh,
just
nice
a final
plug.
plug
Well
for you
done.
Austin Energy customers.
Easy transition.
I do want to thank the panel. Thank you very much for your participation in this.